The wind off the summer sea carried heat like an iron brand, salted and dry, licking over the red-gold hulls of the Myrish galleys as they nosed between the basalt pillars of the broken arm sails, the color of a dusk-lit sky bellied with promise, emblazoned not with a crowned stag or golden lion but with 9 griffins rearing rampant over crossed spears, the sigil the world had half forgotten and the 7 kingdoms had learned to dread only in the songs of soldiers in far-off lists. 50 years had passed since the Golden Company last made landfall in Westeros. Yet the mercenaries moved with the crisp confidence of men returning home from a long season's plunder rather than exiles attempting a perilous gamble. A fine thread of dust trailed behind the first column as it wound upward from the tide flats toward the ancient tower called the Vulture's Roost. To John Cunnington, the ochre haze rising from the horses' hooves carried the faint, bitter taste of saffron and dry bone. Dorne's breath, and with it a whisper of memories long starved. He rode at the head of the vanguard, plated in the dusk-blue enameled steel that had once turned aside an axe blow outside the walls of Astapor. Now that same armor gleamed beneath the Dornish sun, mortgaged to this final dream. Beside him, on a milk-white palfrey, sat a young man with hair the shade of new-minted copper. His bare cheek still soft enough that the first hint of stubble showed like a secret shame. The boy had traded his Sellsword mail for a quilted doublet of Valyrian black, plain but for a thin thread of red silk that traced a dragon rampant over his heart. The device was new, stitched only days past by the camp women. Yet John feared it shone as bright as wildfire to any keen eye, too bright by half. Even here, south of the Prince's Pass, eyes and ravens flew north faster than any honest rider. Still, when the boy shifted shyly in the saddle, Cunnington felt the old affection stir. "Sit tall, my prince," he murmured in the tongue of the disputed lands. The sand snakes watch even their cousins' dreams. Aegon, though the small folk of Lys and Tyrosh had known him as Young Griff, turned his head just enough that one violet eye, deep as dusk behind the lash, met John's. There was fear in that glance, but iron too. "If they watch," the boy answered in the same liquid argot, "let them see a dragon." Their host bivouacked beneath the Vulture's Roost that first night, a scatter of yellow lantern blossoms on the hardpan plain. Cook fires crackled, fat popping in the pans, as Miles Toyn's spearmen erected pikes to mark the outer perimeter. All along the westering horizon, the mountains hunched like giants frozen in the act of kneeling, silent, watchful, indifferent. John Cunnington paced the prince's pavilion with restless strides. Maps lay unrolled upon a low cedar table. Sun-faded galley charts, Dornish road sketches, Astapor parchment annotated in the spidery hand of Septa Lemore. From the shadow at the tent's heart, a man rose, tall, unsmiling, gaunt save for the improbable girth of his golden breastplate. Sir Harry Strickland, Captain General of the Golden Company, had the leathery face of a man more at home counting coin than pledging crowns, yet his voice held iron. 5,000 swords, 3,000 mounts, 200 elephants yet to land, if the seas remain kind. He tapped the parchment where Lemonwood crouched beneath the cliff of Sunspear. Doran Martell sends word his gates stand open, so long as our banners remain furled until treaty is sealed. You have his daughter's favor, they say. A flicker crossed John's face, hope or something more dangerous. Arian Martell offers more than favor. She remembers Rhaegar's children, and she dreams of a crown heavy with old debts. He thought but did not speak. Across the cedar, Prince Aegon leaned over the table, palms flat. "We will honor our hosts," he said, voice low but steady. "But we cannot tarry. My father's realm bleeds. If Daenerys Targaryen reaches Westeros before we do, the dragons will decide all." "Her sails are still months from Slaver's Bay," Strickland countered, "and a war host marches no faster than its slowest mule. The Boneway is narrow, the Prince's Pass worse. Better we wait in sun-swept comfort until the last hull lands, the elephants recovered from the voyage. One misstep in those canyons and..." John's gauntlet fist struck the cedar. "And Cersei Lannister will send riders south the moment her spies learn where we've crawled ashore. The gold cloaks may not dare the sands, but gold buys sand too. Every Dornish holdfast hosts Lannister ears these days. Silence. The distant cry of a night-hawking owl drifted through the tent flap. Then Aegon spoke, softly, yet the words struck like steel. Elephants, spears, or none, we march at dawn. From Sunspear I will salute the bones of Elia Martell, and from Sunspear I will set forth to claim what was stolen from her children. Ser Harry, ready the trumpets. Strickland's eyes lingered on the prince, taking his measure anew, but at last he bowed his creaking neck. As you command, your grace. The ride to Sunspear unfurled like a pageant of parched earth and stubborn olive. At Salt Shore, fisherwives paused in their gutting to gape at the column of Sellswords whose gilded helms flashed brighter than the sea. At Ghost Hill, Lord Toland's maester unfurled a banner of green viper and orange sunburst from the ramparts. A cautious welcome, heavy with unspoken bargain. Each league north opened fresh fissures in the wall of mistrust between Dornish pride and foreign steel, and Jon Connington felt every crack like a thorn beneath his tongue. Yet Prince Aegon rode as though the wind itself yielded to his passage. Listening, greeting, laughing with children who chased the elephant's dust. In the shade of a blood-orange grove outside Sunspear, they made formal parley. Prince Doran received them upon a carven litter borne by spearmen in the colors of House Martell. No sand snakes in sight, yet Tyria of the threefold kiss would sooner hide her daggers than her glare, and so Jon knew the Viper's daughters watched from Barak shadows. The treaty ran to 13 clauses: mutual defense, port duties, the banishment of Lannister envoys from Dornish keepfasts. At its heart lay a single line in Doran's trembling hand: Aegon of House Targaryen shall hereafter be betrothed to Arianne of House Martell. Wax cooled on the parchment as slender fingers pressed seal to scroll. When at last the Prince of Sunspear withdrew, borne toward his water gardens, the litter vanished among date palms whispering with secrets. Yet Jon noted the slight tremor in Doran's hand as he raised farewell. Fear or triumph? Wise men often trembled at both. Night in Sunspear bloomed with spice and song. Market stalls beneath the Tower of the Sun overflowed. Saffron roast kid, pepper wine, steaming bowls of chickpea stew. Golden Company captains diced with Dornish bowmen as local minstrels struck up a ribald tune of Nymeria's thousand ships. Jon Connington, restless, walked the rooftops. From a terrace whose floor mosaic depicted a robed dragon, he watched the southern sky. Somewhere beyond that horizon, Dragonstone crouched in mist, and in its shadow, a throne of barbs waited for blood. A soft step sounded behind him. Arianne Martell's perfume reached him first. Crushed heliotrope, with the faint salt of Sunspear's tide pools clinging to her hair. She wore sand silk dyed the pale violet of dusk, a hue to match the prince she meant to wed. You pace as if the roof might take wing and bear you north, she said. Jon inclined his head. When one has dwelt too long in exile, my lady, every rooftop is a ship. His eyes slid to the courtyard below, where Aegon conversed with a one-armed Dornish knight. The boy's laughter floated upward. Arianne's gaze followed. He is younger than I once imagined, yet less a boy than some men twice his years. Do you fear he is too bold? I fear he is Rhaegar's son, Jon answered, and his breath caught at the memory of tourney tents at Harrenhal, banners snapping bright as spring thunder. Rhaegar had been bold too, bold enough to crown Lyanna Stark and plunge a realm into flame. The world has knives for such as him. The princess's brown eyes sharpened. Then let us hone our own first. She drew from her sleeve a rolled parchment. Raven from the Tor encampment. My uncle Oberyn's Sell-Sail captains report Lannister outriders skirting Prince's Pass. They ride for Nightsong, likely to warn Lord Caron that a storm of exiles gathers on his southern steppe. Connington cursed softly. If Caron closes his gates, the March Lords will soon follow. Our gamble rests on speed. We must hold the Boneway before the Lion's Gold can hire guides. Then ride, Arianne said. I will follow with the elephants once the scorpions are fashioned. She lowered her voice. The sand snakes whisper that Cersei's spy in my father's court is an exile of old Volantis, a fixer of shipping charters. Your Golden Company may know the man. Jon's palm tightened on the rampart stone. "Find him," he said. "If the bitch queen learns our numbers." "She will learn nothing," Arian promised. In the candle glow, her eyes burned hotter than martel saffron. Westeros forgets that Dorne's sun can peel back any lie. They rode at dawn, strung out like a coil of brass winding through the boneway. The pass stank of hot pine and damp cave moss. High above, carrion crows traced wobbling figure eights on the thermals, their distant croaks echoing along cliff faces. The Golden Company marched in rotating wedges. 10 spearmen wide, crossbowmen flanking the baggage carts, knights at the column's tail. Cunnington led the van beside Aegon, while black Balak's half-men screened the slopes with curved Dornish bows. Day by grinding day they climbed, each switchback squeezing the elephants until the beasts trumpeted protest. At Stone Thumb Spur, a rockslide drove wedges of limestone down upon the rear ranks. 6 men died, another 2 crushed beneath sacks of oranges meant for the prince's table. No lion banners fluttered overhead, yet Jon sensed watchers in every cranny. Better a dead scout than a live raven, he thought, but the hills yielded neither. Stone kept counsel. On the 6th day, the pass widened onto the Marcher Plateau. Dry wind whistled through broom grass and littered the path with sun-bleached ghost weeds. Far ahead, a thin tower rose from a stand of oaks, Griffin's Roost, once seat of Jon Cunnington's line. The sight struck him like a mace blow. The familiar parapet swallow-tailed against the sky, the ruined stables where he had first broken a colt. Yet no banner flew from the keep. The gates stood open in sullen invitation. Jon reined in, heart hammering. "If my cousin Ronnet holds true to his letters, the garrison stands ready to yield," he murmured, more prayer than report. Aegon's violet gaze rested on the tower. "Then let us give these walls a lord once more." They crested the hill in silence. Within the courtyard, moss choked the well mouth, and the smithy roof sagged like a drunkard's hat. A thin line of men in patchwork mail awaited before the hall doors. Their captain wore rusted plate. He knelt as Jon dismounted, gauntlet hands extended to proffer a ring, 3 rubies set in bronze. "My lord cousin," he said, voice hoarse with dust, "Griffin's Roost is yours again, if you can hold it." Jon took the ring, throat tight. "We will hold more than this." He turned, raising the captain's hand toward Aegon. "Kneel to your king, Ser Ronnet." The garrison sank to one knee as Aegon Targaryen stepped forward. He said no word, yet when dawn's first light struck his hair, it kindled like a coin fresh from the mint. Even the crows fell silent. From Griffin's Roost they rode for nightsong. News traveled on the wings of rumor. Dornish spears in the pass, elephants in the marches, a dragon reborn. By the time they reached the gullet, farmers fled their hovels clutching children and cracked pots, prayers tumbling from their lips. Lord Caron's scouts harried the Golden Company's foragers, burning storehouses and poisoning wells, yet never offering pitched battle. Harried columns grew hungry. Hungry men listened keenly to the hollow in their bellies. Cunnington understood too well how quickly a mercenary's loyalty melted like spring snow. On the eve of the new moon, as banners drooped under the weight of sweat and road grime, a horn blast cut the dark. From the treeline emerged a dozen riders, banners rolled tight. At their head rode a knight wrapped in black wool despite the heat. The 3 ravens of House Blackwood brooded on his shield. Lord Tytos, rumor claimed, had hanged 2 Freys for trespass only a fortnight past. Now his son Brynden sought other nests in which to perch. Before dawn, more banners joined them. Pink Manderleys, stone-gray Royces, the red apple of Fossaway, the green branch, not the gold. The riverlands simmered with old grief. The north gnawed its losses like a frostbit hare. Under a sky mottled with storm cloud, they gathered as if drawn by a lodestone lodged in the prince's breast. Jon stood beside Aegon atop a rise overlooking the growing camp. Fires bloomed in ragged concentric rings, smoke drifting into the night like ghostly banners. "Hearts beg favors," Jon said softly, "but hearts alone cannot storm King's Landing." Aegon's eyes reflected the fireglow. "Do you doubt them, Lord Jon?" "I doubt everyone," He exhaled. Fear keeps a man alive long enough to be proven wrong. The boy king's smile was small, thoughtful. Then live and watch. I will prove us both right. The Golden Company crossed the Blackwater on a mist-shrouded dawn, ferried by barges seized at Maidenpool. Yet this tale lies ahead. For now the host gathers like thunder above the marches. Each new standard another bar of storm cloud. Within Griffin's roost, John Cunnington stares toward the Trident, remembering the boy he once danced beside a campfire and called his prince. That boy was Ash. The man beside him now was fire reborn. And when the dragon turns his eyes upon the rotted lion and the pale rose of the Reach, the Trident's waters would again run red. This time for a king the realm had all but forgotten, born northward on the golden spears of exile and the fierce, brittle hope of a land that had known too many false dawns. So the banners rise, so the trumpets wind in the passes. And on a lonely roof in Sunspear, a princess watches the horizon for the smoke that will tell her whether love and vengeance can share one crown. The tale has only begun. The bells of Griffin's roost tolled thrice at sunrise, their bronze throats cracked by long abandonment yet still able to summon echoes of an age when storm-born lords rode forth to win their honor. John Cunnington heard those echoes as he finished buckling the last strap of his pauldrons. A sheet of early light spilled in through the casement arrows lit, limning the stone drum tower and the valley beyond in pale gold. Behind those hills, the great host of the Golden Company and its swelling river of Riverlord banners was already stirring. Campfires doused, horses watered, trench latrines filled and covered. War was a litany of small tasks, each one a prayer for the next day's survival. Outside the hall, the courtyard rang with hammer blows as farriers checked shoes and sergeants knocked dents from kettle helms. The elephants, restless after so many days penned within the narrow castle bailey, trumpeted and shifted, heavy feet scuffing the flagstones. John paused to stroke the nearest beast's scarred ear. The hide felt like a cured hide left too close to a brazier. Stronger than plate, but only if kept calm, he reminded himself. A panicked elephant could crush friend as easily as foe. Down by the inner gate 3 figures waited. Prince Aegon in black and scarlet riding leathers, Septa Lemore in plain ash-gray robes with the hood flung back, and Ser Raleigh Duckfield, plumed basin helm tucked beneath one arm. The prince's narrow lips twitched when he saw John approach. "Elephants grow impatient," Aegon said in the common tongue. "They wish to see the Trident before nightfall, and so they shall." John swung into his saddle, joints creaking. Scouts report Lord Cairn's outriders have fallen back across the Windwater. The path to Nightsong lies clear for now. "For now," Duckfield echoed, tugging his mailed fingertips inside gauntlet cuffs. "Steel has a way of finding us regardless of roads." Septa Lemore's gaze lingered on the prince, and something mother-soft gleamed there. "Remember your lessons, Aegon. A true king rides last among his people, that they might shield him with their love." Aegon touched 2 fingers to her sleeve in farewell. "I will earn that love, or perish seeking it." The day's march wound north through low, wind-carved tors and thickets of flowering gorse that painted the hills a riot of yellow. The scent clung to cloaks and throats alike. John rode the ridge line with Black Balak's light horse, every sense alert for dust columns that might betray an approaching enemy. None showed, yet he could not shake the thought of Lannister gold working its poison in unseen ways. Coins in a hedge knight's purse, whispered promises in a harbor brothel, a raven loosed from some half-ruined tower where a maester loyal to Casterly Rock still kept the black candles of his office burning. By mid-afternoon they reached a spine of chalk hills overlooking the Green Arm, where 3 leagues of rippling wheat bowed beneath the breeze, each stalk in thrall to wind and sun. John called a halt. Below, the King's Road split west toward Nightsong and east toward Bronzegate. Scouts returned bearing word that Lord Bryce Cairn had sealed himself behind Nightsong's ashlar walls with a garrison of 1,000. More troubling, a Tyrell bannerman, Ser Gaiard Morrigan of Crow's Nest, had ridden hard from Highgarden with 400 armored lances and was now said to be only a day north, screening the Mander fords. John studied the crossroads while the captains conferred around a circular map table propped on spear shafts. Miles Toyne argued for masking Nightsong and striking at Bronzegate instead, opening the Rainwood coast to friendly shipping. Black Balak favored splitting the elephants into flying columns to raid the lightly held March villages, forcing Karen to sally or starve. Sir Harry Strickland listened, arms folded across his gold-bound cuirass, until at last he vented a weary sigh. "Every path costs coin and blood," the Captain General declared. "Yet only one buys us the crossing of the Trident. We must break the Marcher Lords swiftly. Plant young Griff's banner upon the Blackwater before Mace Tyrell rouses his full power. Aegon, silent until then, set both palms flat on the weather-cracked oak of the table. We move against Nightsong at dawn. Karen's fortress bars the eastern road. They built those walls to defy dragons once. So the songs say. Tonight we build rams and siege towers from their own forests. When the gates fall, I will grant clemency to every man who bends the knee." "And those who do not?" asked Toyne, one brow arched like a cocked arbalest. Aegon's violet eyes were amethyst hard in the slanting sunlight. A king's justice. Darkness crawled across the wheat fields while engineers felled cedar and pine with quick, muffled strokes. Torches were hooded. The men labored by moonlight and whispered curses. John Connington, restless, walked the perimeter of the makeshift siege park where carpenters stitched planks with iron nails heated red bright in portable braziers. Sparks skittered through the grass like fireflies. At the edge of the camp he found Arian Martell seated on a fallen log, cross-legged, sharpening a narrow Dornish stiletto. She had arrived that afternoon with 100 spearmen of House Santigar and twice that number of bowwomen from the Greenblood barges. Now her dusky throat gleamed with perspiration in the chill night air, but her eyes were as cool as a desert well. "You walk like a man pursued," she observed without looking up. "Only by duty." John settled across from her, cradling his helm in both hands. "Nightsong's walls are high. Its lord is proud. A proud man cornered can do great harm." Arian tested the blade against the pad of her thumb. "Let him bend or break. Dorne has waited near 20 years to see Elias' son returned. My father's bones grow brittle. His dreams must be realized before they shatter entirely." A gust fretted the leaves overhead. John weighed her words, feeling their edges. "If we fail, the mountain's crimes will go unmet, your cousin's blood unavenged." "If you fail," she corrected, meeting his gaze at last, "Dorne will bleed again, but suns rise even after the deepest night. It is in their nature to burn the dark away." She slid the dagger into a calf sheath and rose in one sinuous motion. "See that your prince rises with the dawn, Lord John." He watched her stride into the shadows, a ripple of silk, a breath of heliotrope. "The sand snakes are not the only vipers arrayed about this throne," he mused, "but some vipers guarded golden eggs." Nightsong loomed at sunrise, a rugged keep of black granite perched upon a shoulder of the Red Mountains. Twin curtain walls wrapped its flanks like clenched fists, and arrow loops gaped along the parapets. The main gate, a slab of oak banded in iron, stood shut. No challenge rang out as the Golden Company deployed in broad crescent formation, elephants stomping at center while pike blocks shook into ranks to either side. Under a flutter of yellow pennons, John Connington rode forward with Miles Toyne to parley. Above the gate, a lone knight stepped into view. Bryce Caron, his visor raised to reveal a hawk-sharp visage framed by curling chestnut hair. The Lord's cloak bore the nightingale sigil quartered with a pale moon, perhaps a nod to his Morrigan allies camped unseen beyond the hills. "Well met, Griffins and Sellsword scum," Lord Caron called down. "You ride beneath false banners. The true dragons died at the Trident." "Open your gates," John replied, voice echoing off stone. "House Targaryen commands the loyalty of Dorne and half the river lords besides. Bend the knee and join your strength to a righteous king." "A king," Caron laughed, one short bark. "Rhaegar's whelp or Blackfire's bastard, it matters not. You'll find no traitors in Nightsong." Toyne lifted his visor with a mailed thumb. "Then you'll hear no song at all when we pull these walls down around your pretty ears." Caron's answer was the twang of a heavy crossbow. The bolt shattered against John's breastplate, a prayer of splinters and iron that sent his horse rearing. The gate refused another word. "Trumpets!" Jon snarled, heart hammering behind the dented steel. "Let him hear our reply." Steel-shod rams crashed against oak, again and again, until the air rang like a smithy. Above, murder holes belched oil. Shields rose in a glittering roof, but still men screamed as boiling pitch found the cracks between. Siege ladders swayed under the weight of screaming griffins scrambling upward, only to topple when a curtle-armed defender lopped off the top rungs. Yet for each ladder lost, 2 more bit stone. On the eastern flank, 3 siege towers crawled forward on trundling oak wheels. Behind their ironclad noses sheltered a cohort of Dornish spears, Prince Aegon among them. When the first tower kissed the curtain wall, a bridge slammed down with a shuddering boom, and a crimson tide poured across. Jon Connington was there moments later, scaling a breach where sapper charges had blasted a chunk from the parapet. Smoke roiled, stinging the eyes. He emerged into a maelstrom on the wall walk, conscript archers loosing point blank, Dornish spears thrusting back, bodies tumbling to the bailey below. Aegon fought 20 paces distant, Dark Sister's pale blade pealing like a silver bell each time it met steel. Yes, that storied sword had found its way to Griffin's Roost by secret paths, gift of a faceless friend in bravos whose price had yet to be tallied. In the prince's hands it sang anew. One knight went down clutching the stump of an arm, another lost an ear and half his helm. Yet Aegon pressed on, cloak streaming, every motion echoing the painted whispers of Rhaegar at the Trident. Jon joined him, parrying a mace meant for the boy's skull. "Steady!" He barked over the din, "Push west to the gatehouse." They fought side by side through broken crenels and charred pitchpots, past the corpse of a banner-bearer tangled in his own dripping colors. At the gatehouse gallery they found the winless team dead, slain by their own comrades, it seemed, in some frantic last attempt to keep the portcullis shut. Aegon planted Dark Sister's point and turned the crank himself. Chains rattled, and below them the iron teeth lurched upward. Out in the killing field the ram crews saw the gate rise and surged forward in a jubilant roar. Elephants advanced at a trot, trunks raised like war horns, smashing through the half-charred palisade and into the courtyard beyond. The battle became slaughter. Defenders penned between falling ladders and basket-hilted Volantine blades, elephants trampling lines of shield walls flat. Through it all Aegon moved like a needle of night sewn through a tapestry of crimson. When at last Lord Bryce-Caron was brought before him, helmed, disarmed, the moon and nightingale cloak torn and spattered, the prince's breast heaved with a warrior's spent fury. Jon expected vengeance. Instead, Aegon offered peace. "Kneel," he commanded, voice raw, "and rise my lord again, sworn to House Targaryen." Bryce-Caron spat blood. "I will kneel, but only to bury my dead." Yet after a long, shuddering silence, he sank to one knee. The courtyard hushed to a ringing stillness. Aegon Targaryen laid Dark Sister lightly upon the man's shoulder, and on that stroke a March Lord's fate uncoiled. They tarried 3 days at Nightsong to bury the fallen, dress the wounded, and harvest stores from the vaults. A fleet of Tyroshi grain galleys put in at Massey's Hook, drawn by Strickland's promise of double freight. The wounded rode in straw-lined wagons. Those too weak for the jolts were left with coin and a Dornish priestess whose flame-kissed scars marked her a devotee of R'hllor. On the 4th dawn they broke camp. Morrigan's lancers had withdrawn in haste after Nightsong fell, leaving only scorched farmland and a few burned hamlets smoldering in their wake. The Golden Company advanced along the southern ridge of the Rainwood, shadowed by the mournful cries of carrion birds. Now autumn's first breath chilled the evenings. Campfires burned brighter, and cloaks pulled tight stank of horse sweat and smoke. At Bronzegate the small folk threw open the timber palisade before the vanguard even topped the rise, setting out wheels of cheese and baskets of late plums as offering. No lord remained within. Ser Ambrose Buckler had ridden north months prior to muster at Bitterbridge, leaving only gray-haired master-at-arms old enough to remember the bells that rang for the boy King Aegon V on Dragonstone. The garrison bent the knee in silence. "See how fear yields before hope," Septa Lemore murmured as they watched townsfolk pour wine for elephants. Each house that joins us is a stone removed from Cersei's wall. Fear is a chisel sharp enough to carve any stone, Jon said, though he allowed himself the smallest dream. Letters flew like starlings from Aegon's field desks. Parchments stamped with the crowned griffin and dragon sigils, addressed to Lord Tarly at Horn Hill, to Estermont's Castellan, to Pylus at Dragonstone. He wrote not as a beggar but as a king returned. No pleas, only summons for sworn oaths left unclaimed too long. In each missive Jon glimpsed the fire of a ruler who had learned statecraft at his nursemaid's knee and war at his guardian's side. Yet for every answering raven that brought a seal cracked open in fealty, another came blank. Burned, perhaps, or intercepted. Reports spoke of Lannister agents spreading coin along the Rose Road, hiring hedge knights to swell Tyrell lances, of a Redwyne squadron sailing from the Arbor to blockade Blackwater Bay, of Euron Greyjoy capturing Shield Islands and turning longships toward the Mander, thus nipping Highgarden's heartline. Westeros convulsed with a dozen uncoordinated maladies, any one of which might prove mortal. The greatest danger lay unseen. Rumor of a second dragon queen east of the Red Waste, wingspread broad enough to cast slums in shadow. Though separated by seas, her shadow already lengthened across councils. Jon watched Aegon's jaw clench each time a raven from Volantis spoke Daenerys' name. Yet the boy outwardly kept command of both temper and tongue. On a cool, mist-drowned morning a scout galloped in from the north claiming Mace Tyrell himself had broken camp at Bitterbridge with 30,000 foot and 5,000 mounted lances. Banners of Tyrell, Oakhart, Fossaway, Hightower, Rowan. A green tide rolling toward the Blackwater, intent upon smashing the bastard host before it reached the Trident. Jon summoned his captains in Night Song's great hall. Now there's by right of conquest to weigh the news. Wooden benches scraped, armor clinked. The air smelled of damp rushes and old blood newly scrubbed. Harry Strickland spoke first. Our strength stands at 9 and 20,000 spears, fewer than half mounted. We cannot face the Tyrells in open plain and hope to prevail. Black Balak countered, stroking his forked beard. Then we bleed them hedgehog style in the rainwood's teeth. Many paths twist through those bog valleys. An elephant charge in narrow glen is worth 10 across an open heath. Jon Connington shook his head. The Reachmen seek to pin us south of the Blackwater while Paxter Redwyne's fleet lands behind. We must deny them the river crossing first, not later. Aegon rose. He wore no crown, yet in that moment he needed none. We march hard for the Trident. We seize the Ruby Ford where my father fell and fortify both banks. Let Tyrell wage war on Riverstones and Memory. By the time his vanguard sights our lines, Riverlords north of the ford will have raised their levies at my call. Memory cuts both ways, Lamore warned. Some yet blame Rhaegar for starting Robert's war. Then I will finish Robert's peace, Aegon vowed. Silence closed like a gauntlet. One by one, captains bowed assent. They left Night Song in disciplined columns, each company banner snapping at the rear of an elephant cart. The march pressed through Moonrise Vale, where mist pooled waist-high among the pines and muffled the clatter of hooves. 2 days beyond, they struck the King's Road again near Summerhall's charred bones. There Jon ordered a brief halt, more for his own sake than any strategic merit. Winds whispered through broken archways. Sunlight painted moats in empty banquet halls where once, legend said, Aegon the Unlikely had died with his friends inside a ring of dragon flame. Time and ruin had consumed all but sorrow. A second life for a second Aegon? Jon wondered. Or a second pyre. That night, as the host camped in the shadow of Summerhall's shattered kiln towers, scouts captured a ragged trio attempting to slip north. 2 were field hands wearing stolen mail. The third, gaunt beneath a wide-brimmed straw hat, proved none other than Dick Crabb, former sergeant under Brienne of Tarth, turned poacher after the War of 5 Kings. He begged audience with Aegon, claiming he rode 4 of Lord Tarly's outriders and bore urgent tidings. Randall Tarly had marched east from Horn Hill against Mace Tyrell's order, driving 1,200 huntsmen across the Kimmet Hills in forced night rides, oath-bound to the Queen but wary of Tyrell's softness. Lord Tarly goes where victory may yet be bought cheap, Crabb rasped once he'd been fed wine. He reckons the reachmen will break on your Sellsword pikes and leave barely scraps for his sword to chew. Better he chew first. Aegon thanked him, bestowed a purse, then turned to his council. Lord Tarly is no friend, but he knows war's pulse. How use this? Jon's thoughts raced. If Tarly defies Tyrell command, fissures widen in their host. We lure him to us, offer what Tyrell withholds. Command, Lamore guessed. Jon nodded. Make him hand of the king once King's Landing falls, or grant him the Dornish marches he covets. Either crown will by his sword. Aegon considered, cheeks hollowed by flickering torchlight. And if he accepts yet later turns? Then the wall of swords at our back grows one layer thicker before it breaks. Jon allowed himself a grim smile. I will pen the offer. 3 more dawns brought them within sight of the Blackwater rush. The river gleamed pewter in the slant of early sun, its surface veiled by slow-moving mists that parted around low islets thick with alder scrub. Beyond the far bank, ruins of the camps Robert Baratheon had raised during his rebellion still scarred the meadows, fire-blackened palings, broken cook ovens half sunk in mud. The Ruby Ford itself shimmered to the west where the King's Road dipped to meet the water in a pebbled shelf. Jon Connington drank in the sight, feeling the river's breath on his cheeks like a balm and a blade both. Here, almost half a lifetime passed. He had urged his prince to fall back across these shallows when Robert's hammer blow threatened the vanguard. Rhaegar had refused, crimson-black armor shining in the sun, and died beneath an axe that split both breastplate and dream. The memory lodged like a spear point behind Jon's sternum. He leaned on it now, let its pain sharpen him. Strickland supervised construction of ditch and palisade works on the south bank. 100 carpenters felled poplars, fashioning chevaux de frise to line the shallows. Elephants dragged cartloads of loose stone to raise makeshift ramparts. Meanwhile, Aegon dispatched ravens upriver to Lord Blackwood at Raventree Hall and downriver to Acorn Hall and Maidenpool, commanding every levy to gather at Ruby Ford within a fortnight or be named rebel. Some messages bore wax seals shaped like a 3-headed dragon clutching a harp. Others carried a small garnet in place of wax, a covert sign Jon himself devised to mark those lords most suspect. Trust but mark all debts. For days passed in feverish labor. On the 5th dawn, scouts reported dust clouds to the south, Tyrell outriders, vanguard to the main host. Green banners glimpsed between the hillocks confirmed what the river's breeze already carried. The faint tang of crushed mint, heraldic perfume of Highgarden smithies where armorers steeped chain links in scented oil. War bears its own fragrances. Tyrell's army made camp 3 miles off, standard lines drawn with engineers' precision. Pavilions of ash-green silk, picket lines for destriers, trench latrines that steamed beneath the noon sun. Jon studied them through a Myrish lens from a crow tower erected overnight. Knights in gilded sallets strolled between tents, laughing. Cooks roasted swine on spits the length of oars, confidence bordering on arrogance. Yet behind those bright banners marched men hardened by storm's end sieges and Blackwater mud. No flower could bloom so large without root in blood. The next morning, horns pealed. 2 riders approached the Ruby Ford beneath a flag of truce. Ser Haber Redwine and Ser Galladon Rowan, each armored in gold filigree plate that glinted like the coins their fathers minted. Jon rode out with Aegon, Strickland, and Arion Martell. Ser Haber reined in at spear's point, lifting his visor. Lord Mace Tyrell invites the pretender attending him to yield forthwith, trusting Highgarden's mercy. Lay down arms, disperse these Sellswords, and be escorted to the Red Keep where justice shall be served. Aegon guided his palfrey 2 steps forward. Inform Lord Tyrell that the mercy of this host lies in its restraint. We defend the lawful claim of Aegon of House Targaryen, 6th of his name, true-born son of Rhaegar. Withdraw across the Blackwater and swear fealty, or witness the field awash in blood that might have grown roses. Rowan's gauntlets tightened on his reins. Your numbers pale beside ours. We hold half the river crossings behind you. What hope binds you to this mudflat? Aegon answered with a single motion. He lifted Dark Sister and turned the blade flat, catching full sun so that silver-white fire flared across the ford. In that scorching beam, Jon believed he saw Rhaegar's soul kindle once more. "Hope enough," the prince said. The parley ended. Red wine spat into the water, more theatrics than contempt, and spurred back toward camp. The Tyrell assault began at dawn 3 days later. Thousands of foot slogged forward beneath a screen of archers throwing clouds of whistling shafts. Jon's crossbowmen replied from trench parapets. Northmen under Lord Small Jon Umber, fresh from the Twins where they'd slipped Walder Frey's noose, cheered each arrow that sprouted in a reachman's breast. Yet the Tyrell advance never slackened. Elephants lumbered into the shallows, trunks flinging stones at the packed infantry, while Sellswords and Volantine Scale thrust long pikes between the beasts' legs. A line of head-sharp laburas bound with iron spikes barred the ford. The first Tyrell spearmen hit those defenses and recoiled, leaving bodies tangled like broken stalks. Still more pressed on, climbing corpses to breach the palisade. Midday sun beat down. Aegon rode everywhere, cloak torn, helm lost early to a glancing mace. Jon tracked him across the chaos, heart in his throat. When a trio of Oakhart lancers crashed through a gap and charged straight for the prince, Jon kicked his gelding hard, intercepting. He parried one lance aside, vaulted from his saddle into the path of another, struck the horse's head with his shield. Beast and rider went down in a tangle. The third lancer raised his spear for the killing stroke, but Dark Sister flashed and the man toppled, helm cloven. Dust rose so thick the air tasted of clay. Jon caught Aegon's arm. "Back to the reserve line. This field is a threshing floor." The prince shoved sweat-matted hair from his eyes. A king yields nothing while subjects bleed for him. Before Jon could respond, a trumpet cut the din. From the Tyrell right, horse banners burst free. Ser Gaillard Morrigan leading 2,000 heavy cavalry in wedge. They thundered across the ford's upper shallows where the water ran chest-deep on men but scarcely to a destrier's knees. Jon's stomach rolled. They found the crossing. "Reserve pikes to the high bank," he roared and spurred away. But the Morrigan charge struck first. Reach knights crashed into the flank of Black Balak's Pelosi phalanx, long pikes snapping like twigs beneath shield-breaking momentum. Elephants bellowed, wheeled. One reared high and collapsed backward onto a swarm of Tyrell men-at-arms, crushing friend and foe alike. Jon carved a path toward the breach. The sound of battle narrowed to a ringing in his ears, the world reduced to flashes. Maces rising, swords plunging, the sour tang of blood. He thought of a boy crowned at Harrenhal, of rubies spilling into a river, of shame and exile and a promise made in a Myrish winehouse. Then he saw the prince again. Aegon on foot now, cloak gone completely, armor battered, standing. Atop a mound of mud and corpses where the Morrigan wedge had stalled. Dark Sister whirled. A green and white banner bearing the crowing blackbird toppled as its bearer fell. Jon forced his mount through the press, shouting hoarse orders. "Form on the prince. Shields forward. Pikes out. Push." The Pelosi regrouped behind him, locking bronze shields in half-moon. Slowly, inexorably, they advanced, each step shoving back the Reach cavalry whose mounts floundered on churned muck and tangled bodies. Crossbow bolts whipped overhead from Jon's trench line, punching through weak points in gorgets and visor slits. The Morrigan wedge became a messy huddle, then a rout as riders peeled away, seeking firmer ground. Bows cut them down in retreat. Across the wider field, Tyrell infantry wavered under elephant charges renewed. Ariane's green blood archers ignited pitch-soaked arrows, loosing into enemy shield walls. Flames crawled across oiled shields, smoke whipped by breeze into faces unaccustomed to battlefield fire. Under that choking pall, the Reach host's cohesion frayed. As the sun sank red into the trees, horns signaled withdrawal. Tyrell banners fell back beyond bowshot, leaving the ford carpeted in corpses. The river itself ran scarlet, frothing around stones as if refusing the blood gifted it. Jon Connington slumped beside a water cart, helm dented, arms trembling. Aegon knelt in the mud opposite, washing gore from Dark Sister with torn linen strips. All about them stretched the dead. Yet above ragged clouds, the first evening star blinked awake. "We held," Aegon breathed, half wonder, half wrath. "Father," we held. Jon reached across the cart, clasped the boy's forearm. "And on this field, a realm remembered its dragon. That night ravens flew again, missives to Riverrun, to Pike, to Sunspear, bearing witness to victory." Scouts returned past midnight with rumor that Mace Tyrell had quarreled fiercely with Randyll Tarly during retreat, that Lord Rowan had withdrawn his banner entirely, that Shrike Lord Swan rode with half his retainers for King's Landing, perhaps to warn the Queen. At dawn, a single rider approached under white flag, an aged septon leading a mule that dragged a cart stuffed with lavender-wrapped corpses of Reach Knights. He bore a parchment sealed with the Golden Rose. Within, Lord Tyrell petitioned access to recover dead and treat wounded under truce. Aegon granted it, but appended his own demand. Tyrell must accept parley at the Prince's Pavilion at sunset. Mace Tyrell came, though not alone. He brought his mother, the Queen of Thorns, crone small but keen as a drawn needle, and Randyll Tarly in dust-caked plate, and Paxter Redwine's nephew Ser Dennis as token of the fleet. They faced Aegon and Jon across a plain cedar table outside the prince's command tent. The Ruby Ford lay behind, its waters carving a low song between banks still littered with burned palisade spikes. "What would you?" Mace demanded, sweat beading in his curled mustache. "You have cost my house dear. Do you seek to extort ransom now?" Aegon's answer was calm. "I seek peace and a realm reclaimed. Swear House Tyrell to my cause. Release your daughter from her marriage to the false King Tommen, and stand aside while I claim the throne stolen from my blood." Tyrell spluttered. "Stand aside? After this slaughter? For a Sellsword prince." Olenna Tyrell rapped her cane on the table. "Hush, boy. The Sellsword's sword seems the sharper today." Her sharp eyes flicked to Aegon, then Jon, then Arryn in the shadows beyond. "You ask the rose to yield before the bud has opened. Yet perhaps buds bloom faster in good soil." She tapped the parchment before her. "Give us terms we might survive. A marriage, perhaps." Aegon inclined his head. "As you propose. When Cersei is deposed, I shall wed Marjorie Tyrell, uniting dragon and rose." Even Mace fell silent at that. Olenna's mouth twitched, a smile or grimace. "And the rose shall water the dragon's roots with coin and bread. Not blood?" "Bread first," Aegon replied. "But should the realm's enemies remain obstinate, coin must buy steel." Randyll Tarly cleared his throat. "And what of the Queen's lions?" Jon answered, "Their fangs will break on stone soon enough. Join us, and you may bear witness." In the end, the pact was struck. Inked on sheepskin beneath a tense rust-smelling canvas, witnessed by godswood leaves and the rippling blackwater, sealed with the rose and dragon pressed together in red wax. Tyrell's host would fall back to Bitterbridge, open supply lines for the prince's army, and hold the Reach against Lannister reprisal. In return, Aegon pledged marriage and dominion over Crownland's lands presently held by Bracken and Rosby once the throne was his. When the Reach lords had gone, Jon Connington found himself alone atop the ford's eastern bluff where the first sunbeams turned river fog into rose gold. He knelt among trampled reeds where rubies once scattered from a surcoat, long ago. Closing his eyes, he pressed fingers into the mud until they found a smooth stone. He turned it in his palm, small, cold, unremarkable. A token for the fallen. He tossed it back into the current. The river carried the stone north, toward the Trident's branching heart, toward destiny. Behind him, horns sounded. The Golden Company was already striking camp, banners lifting in new wind. Tomorrow they would cross into the Crownlands proper, with Tyrell grain trains rumbling behind and Blackwood levies before. And somewhere beyond fields still glistening with dew, King's Landing waited. Its red walls tall, its queen cornered, its small folk restless. Jon rose, armor creaking, and turned toward the stir of tents. Aegon stood ringed by captains, head bare to the dawn, light sparking in his copper hair. In that moment Jon no longer saw Rhaegar's ghost, or his own shattered youth, but a king born in exile and tempered in blood. A king who might yet mend a kingdom's wounds where steel alone could not. Wind rifled the prince's cloak as if it too yearned for flight. Jon set his foot upon the winding track that led down to camp. "Not too quickly," he murmured to no one. But soon, and the river kept flowing, ever north, ever onward, singing of battles past and crowns yet won. Rain swelled the rushes along the Blackwater's fork, drumming a gray cadence upon canvas and steel as the host of the Golden Company broke camp for the march east. The storm rolled in from the sea at dawn, slow, ponderous, unrelenting, soaking wool cloaks until they clung like grave shrouds and turning the churned earth of the ford into a sucking morass that swallowed men to the calf. Even the elephants seemed subdued beneath the weight of water, their broad backs beaded with droplets that ran in rivulets along ridges of old scar tissue. Yet none complained. Victory at the Ruby Ford had left every throat raw with triumph, and rain could not quench a fire kindled in blood. Jon Connington stood beneath a tattered awning at the edge of the trench lines, watching engineers dismantle the last chevaux de frise. Mud streaked his enameled breastplate, obscuring the griffin rampant. Dents from mace and hammer told the tale of yesterday's slaughter more honestly than any bard's harp. Across the mire, knights and petty lords collected their wounded, loading litters onto ox carts bound for a field infirmary hastily erected in a ruined sheepfold a mile upriver. Smell of blood and wet wool rode the gusts. A horn blast cut through the patter, raw and urgent. Jon's gaze snapped south where the King's Road crested a low hill. A dustless plume through rain, more gray than brown, rose beyond the ridge, accompanied by the distant clink of harness. Scouts returning, or something worse. He motioned to a mounted outrider who waited in the lee of a cart. "Fetch Black Balak and 4 of his crossbowmen. I want eyes on that ridge." "No need," a familiar voice said. Randall Tarley emerged from the curtain of rain astride a rangy black courser, helm tucked beneath one arm, green cloak sodden yet immaculate. Behind him rode a wedge of huntsmen heavy horse, their stag antler badges dulled beneath water but no less proud. They reined up before Jon, hoofs sinking in mud with wet, sucking sounds. Tarley's sharp eyes took in the scene, lingering on stretcher-bearers trudging past with limp shapes under linen. "Efficient," he said in that clipped, sandpaper timbre. "How many dead?" "Fewer than theirs," Jon answered. He offered no courtesy title. Tarley had not yet sworn and might still choose his own path. "We counted 1,400 fallen on our side, 200 more likely to perish of wounds. Their losses treble ours, though they hauled off as many corpses as they could in the night." Tarley nodded once, neither approval nor sympathy. "Losses acceptable for the ground gained." He swept rain from his close-cropped beard. "Lord Tyrell breaks camp, taking his banners for Bitterbridge to lick wounds and weigh new loyalties with his mother's tongue. You have bought yourself breathing room." "We earned it," Jon corrected. "Aegon risks his life in the van." "Risk is the coin of kingship," Tarley said. "But a commander must know when to spend and when to hoard." His dark gaze flicked toward the eastern horizon, where low clouds merged with distant forest in a seamless smear. "King's Landing lies 6 days' hard march from here if the roads hold. 7 or 8 if this weather turns the crownlands to mire. Your elephants will slow you. Redwine's galleys will watch the coast. Cersei has ravens enough to know yesterday's outcome by now. She will dig in." Jon studied him through the rain. "You came to warn or to bargain?" "To observe." Tarley's smile was thin as a paper cut. "And to remind you of the promise you dangled. A man may bend his knee for honor, but he keeps it bent for reward. Your dragon prince spoke of titles. Hand of the king." "So the parchment reads," Tarley agreed. "But parchment is thin. I would see the measure of the boy who would make me his right hand before I gamble the huntsman's oath." "He is no boy," Jon said, anger tensing his voice. "He is a king raised in exile, tempered by more battlefields than most squires ever glimpse. Ride with him and judge for yourself." A distant trumpet answered as if on cue. The column was forming. Dornish spears first, then elephants, then Toyn's Myrish foot in square blocks bristling with pike heads. At the center rode Aegon, bareheaded beneath the rain, copper hair plastered to his brow, dark sister sheathed across his back in a plain leather scabbard darkened to near black by water. No crown, no gems, only a cloak of crimson wool and a surcoat embroidered with the three-headed dragon entwined about a griffin rampant. He looked young, vulnerable even, yet the guards who rode tight around him watched every twitch of shadow for threat, and the men who marched behind bore themselves as if following destiny. Tarly regarded the prince in silence as the host trudged past, hooves squelching, standards sodden against pike hafts. After a long moment he inclined his head, fractional, yet unmistakably respectful. "Very well, I will ride in his column today." Jon released a breath he had not known he held. "You'll have quarters near the vanguard. Keep your tent," Tarly said, turning his charger with a flick of reins. "I march with my men." They made only 8 miles that first day before rain drowned the road entirely, forcing a halt in low meadows south of Hayford. Cook fires sputtered under canvas awnings. Bread turned to paste in hungry mouths. Yet Aegon walked the camp regardless, cloak thrown back, rain washing tracks of exhaustion from his cheeks. At each fire he paused to listen, to ask a name, to thank a man for valor. Jon followed at a discreet distance, noting the way shoulders straightened when the prince approached, how voices steadied as they answered. A king's presence was worth a regiment of healers. Near dusk they sought shelter beneath a half-collapsed herrick newly commandeered from an abandoned croft. Arianne Martell crouched within, flanked by 2 of her green-blood archers working at a small brazier hidden from rain beneath a makeshift tarcloth lean-to. They stripped flight feathers from arrows, replacing them with longer goose veins better suited to wet air. She looked up, eyes glinting bronze in the brazier's glow. "I count fewer banners than this morning," she said by way of greeting, voice pitched low so that wind would not carry. "The storm leeches stragglers." Jon brushed straw from his cloak. "Rear guard brings them in. No man deserts with Balak's riders behind him." Aegon hunkered beside her. "Any word from Sunspear? A raven at noon." She wiped a plume of rain from her lips. "My father's healers say the fever recedes, but his gait falters. He urges haste, softly." Something flickered across her features. Fear, perhaps, or impatience. Dorne walks in 2 minds. If you seize the throne swiftly, the sand snakes will carve your sigil upon every shield. But should Cersei hold the city through winter, hungry men grow fickle. "They will have their victory before snow," Aegon promised, voice quiet yet iron-hard. Jon studied them. The prince and the princess, shoulders nearly touching, steam of breath mingling. Political marriage, yes, but fire crackled beneath the ash. And fire, he knew, could scorch as surely as it warmed. They broke camp under bruised skies. Rain eased to a damp mist that clung to hair and lashes. The King's Road climbed northeast through gentle hills patched with thistle and stalks of last season's barley still standing like desiccated ghosts. On the 3rd day they crossed the Rose Road. Scouts reported no sign of Tyrell pursuit. All banners had indeed fallen back beyond the Mander. Yet other riders carried darker news. Lannister columns on the march from the west under Ser Kevan, sweeping storms end levies before them like stubble. Euron Greyjoy's longships sighted off Duskendale, sails black as squall clouds. Whispers from Gulltown of Arryn Lords declarant gathering at the Eyrie, uncertain whether to fly falcon or dragon. Around hearth fires that night, Jon laid those tidings before the circle of captains. Strickland traced routes upon a damp map with a dagger point. "Too many fronts," he muttered. "We must strike the red heart and damn the limbs." "A siege may drag months," Balak warned, twirling his waxed mustache between forefinger and thumb. The tips stiffened with pine pitch until each strand resisted the rain. "King's Landing is no Dornish market town. Its walls are thick. Its stocks still hold grain from Highgarden's last harvest." Jon looked to Tarly across the fire. The Lord of Horn Hill sat cross-legged, sharpening a curved skinning knife, whetstone rasp whispering with each pass. "The grain is true," Tarly said without lifting his gaze. "Yet soldiers eat more than wheat. They eat gold, pay bribes, plunder. Cersei's coffers are near spent after the Faith Militant and the Ironborn raids. The city's gold cloaks might barter their loyalty for bread come winter." Aegon, flanked by Raleigh Duckfield and Septa Lamore, listened with arms folded. Winter is weeks away. I will not allow hunger alone to win this crown. How then? Toyne challenged. Sparks leaped between raindrops as he tossed a twig on the fire. A ladder at midnight? The Dragon Pit Gate. We take the city from within, Aegon answered, eyes reflecting ember light. He drew a folded parchment from beneath his cloak, the wax broken. A message arrived 2 hours past. He handed it to Jon, for words only, inked in neat, narrow letters. The mice are yours. Jon felt his stomach tighten. Varys. Some strings tugged in darkness had answered. The spider moved. It could be ruse. It is opportunity, Aegon said. The Master of Whisperers commands passages beneath the red keep no mason alive remembers. If they open at the hour of our choosing. He let the words hang between them like a drawn bowstring. Strickland rubbed weary eyes. You would breach the city while our army stands without? Risk assassins in every shadow. I will not ask my men to die on walls I need not storm, Aegon replied. And if Varys fails, our host remains ready for siege. But if he succeeds, a swift stroke spares thousands. Tarly sheathed his knife with a decisive snap. A king must own his blade. I will ride at your side if you choose this path, but hear me. Spies and shadows can crack stone. Yet the mortar that follows must be forged in daylight. Take the city in darkness, then show the sun your victory before the lion rallies. Aegon inclined his head. Then we march to the gates and let their fear of the host prime them for the dagger within. He rose. At first light we break for the Rose Road's end. 2 days before they reached the Kingswood's outer fringes, word came of Ser Kevin's host struck by north-marching Ironborn raiders near Wendwater, delaying the lion's claws that might have flanked them in the Crownlands. The gods, Jon thought, play strange dice, yet one must seize good luck by the throat before it wriggles free. The Kingswood greeted them with towers of elm and oak, leaves already tinged with pale gold, though it was only the high heart of summer. Broad-trunked sentinels loomed over the narrow forest track, canopy whispering secrets above squealing axles and low elephant rumbles. Scouts reported poachers and bandits melting away at the column's approach. Small mercy, for arrow in the dark could slay as surely as scorpion. Jon rode near the prince, Tarly on the other side, their horses picking careful steps among roots slick with rotted leaf mold. Conversation drifted toward the city ahead. Cersei musters no more than 10,000 gold cloaks, Jon said. The faith militant lost numbers suppressing the bred riots. Her Lannister guards hold the Red Keep, but half are green boys. Tarly agreed. Yet walls breed courage. If she floods the lower wards, Varys will open sewer dams to drain them again. Aegon cut in. The spider knows each pipe like the weave of his own webs. You trust him. Jon's tone made it question rather than accusation. I trust his motives align with mine for now, Aegon replied. He served my family once. He seeds plots but harvests dragons. Tarly snorted. Spiders weave only for themselves. Step lightly, your grace. They reached the outlying hamlet of Sow's Horn at dusk. Smoke curled from thatched roofs, though shutters were barred. The small folk had seen armies enough. Aegon decreed food would be bought, not taken. Quartermasters left coin at each door for eggs, cheese, smoked eels. Some villagers even ventured shyly to fence lines, curiosity outweighing fear now that gold glinted in exchange. Past Sow's Horn the land dipped toward Blackwater Bay. At sunrise, mist parted to reveal King's Landing's walls sprawled across 3 low hills, Visenya's, Aegon's, and Rhaenys, their crenellations black against dawn's blush. The city's massive defensive chain lay slack across the mouth of the river, each iron link wider than a man's chest. Beyond, the Red Keep crowned Aegon's hill, towers blazing scarlet in the first light. The host arrayed itself on sloping ground half a league southwest of the city, a semicircle of pikes and bright banners visible from every rampart. Jon rode the line, noting the hush that fell even over Selsward packs who had roared bawdy verses only yesterday. Silence born of awe, ambition, fear. King's Landing devoured men's dreams as surely as it fueled them. At noon, a small deputation of goldcloaks emerged from the muddy dragon gate under white flag, escorted by two gaunt septons bearing the seven-pointed star. They carried a letter bearing the royal seal, red wax stamped with the lion's head. Jon received them with Toyne, Strickland, and Tarly while the prince waited in sight but out of bowshot. The captain of the Goldcloaks, a weathered man with hollow eyes and 3 days' stubble, read aloud, "Her Grace Cersei of House Lannister invites the parley of the pretender styling himself Aegon to discuss rightful succession and avert slaughter of innocents." Jon suppressed a grim smile. "She hopes to stall. Her Grace's concern for innocence is new," he observed. "She might have fed them when grain barrels stood full." The captain's cheek twitched. "We are messengers, sire. No more." Tarly stepped forward, towering, rain still dripping from his shoulders though the sky shone bright. "Tell your queen the king will attend her walls at sunset with reply."
"No sooner."
They left, heels spurring tired horses back through the gate. Toyne exhaled. "Sunset gives them hours to ready scorpions." Jon turned to Aegon. "We will write our reply, in steel rather than ink." The prince nodded. "And Varys, on his hour." Jon glanced at the lowering sun. "He moves tonight." Late afternoon stretched shadows of trebuchets hoisted on the high ground, booms creaking as engineers checked tension. They carried no payload yet, mere thread enough. Elephants dragged palisade stakes into semicircles, shaping kill zones with overlapping fields. All noise carried to the walls where goldcloaks peered over merlins, eyes wide. Jon made rounds. Crossbow strings waxed, Dornish scorpions winched, torches soaked in pitch ready to ignite. He found the prince in his tent, dark sister laid across his knees, blade catching slats of light through slitted canvas. "When night falls," Aegon began without looking up, "I enter the tunnels with Ser Raleigh, Duckfield, and 10 chosen. Jon, I would have you command the host in my absence." Jon stiffened. "My place is at your side. You have been at my side every step from the broken arm," Aegon said gently. "Now I need you here. If I fall, you must rally them. Claim the city by storm. Seat yourself as hand until a coronation can be convened." Heat of protest rose. "You will not fall." "Men fall," the prince corrected softly. "Even princes who bear dragons on their breast." He looked up, eyes violet and steady. "Will you swear to it?" Jon's voice came hoarse. "I swear to keep the embers lit until you return to tend the flame." He knelt, unsheathed dagger, and sliced his own palm. Blood welled vivid crimson. The prince mirrored the gesture. They pressed hands together, mingling wounds. "Dragon and Griffin," Aegon whispered, "brothers until death." Night bled across the bay, thick with sea salt tang. Torches ringed the host like a constellation fallen to earth, each flame mirrored by lanterns flickering atop the city walls. Somewhere within those walls, bells told the hour of the wolf. Jon stood on an outcropping of stone above the encampment, cloak drawn tight, eyes fixed on the looming black silhouette of the Red Keep. No movement betrayed the prince's infiltration. The city's countless windows showed nothing but dim candle glow or shuttered dark. Minutes crawled. Jon tried to read omens in wind shifts, in the stuttering of torches. Nothing. He forced slow breaths. Trust the plan. Trust the prince. Trust the spider's web. And yet he knew webs could ensnare prey as easily as lift them. A grunt beside him, Randall Tarly joined on the ridge, visor up, showing a face etched by years of harsh sun and harder judgment. "Rest, Connington," he said. "Your watch will not hasten outcome. My duty is to watch." Tarly's gaze followed his across the dark sprawl. "I once held the city under siege. Robert sat where you stand, though we lacked elephants." He chafed with every heartbeat, longing for the assault. Yet he waited, and the gates opened for him in good time. The Lord folded gauntlet hands behind his back. Gates open more readily when gold changes pockets. That time, maybe. Jon's voice tasted of iron. This time opens on courage. All men call their own coin courage, Tarly said, but without mockery. May yours by the throne. A horn's wail rose from the southern quarter of the city. Brief, uncertain, cut short almost immediately, as though a watchman had thought better of sounding full alarm. Jon's heart slammed. He leaned forward, straining for any sign. A flicker of orange bloomed low on the eastern wall. A torch snuffed or flung, then silence again. He exhaled a breath he had not realized he held. Another long minute passed. Then, almost delicate, the bells began to ring. Not the riotous clangor of alarm, but a single bell, slow, deliberate, deep. Toll thrice, paused, tolled thrice more. Jon felt a shiver race his spine. The bell of the great September, perhaps, or the inner keep. He turned to Tarly. What means 3 and 3? Tarly's brows furrowed. In Old Town, the scepter's bell rings that pattern when a new archmaester is elected. And here, who can say? Tarly answered, but his hand moved to rest on the pommel of Heartsbane with unsettling certainty. From behind rose hoofbeats. Strickland, helm dangling, sweat and rain mingling, called up the slope. Word from scouts on the Rose Road. Lannister outriders 2 leagues off. Ser Kevin's survivors, perhaps. Small numbers but swift. Jon nodded. Screen them with light horse. Delay without engaging. Strickland wheeled away. The bell rang again, 3 and 3, and this time Jon thought he heard shouting echo faint along the river, muted by distance. Lights flared near the mud gate, bobbing like fireflies. A runner scrambled up the ridge, breath hitching. My lord, they're opening the King's Gate. Drawbridge lowers. The words punched air from Jon's lungs. He pivoted to Tarly. Rally cavalry. We ride at once. Lightning cracked. No. A flash of fire from the Red Keep's mid-tower, followed by dull boom. Smoke spiraled upward, black against stars. Jon vaulted to his destrier saddle, drawing sword with ringing hiss. At the sight, nearby pike companies raised a ragged cheer, voices rolling outward through camp like thunder across a plain. Trumpets answered, high and wild. Elephant handlers urged their mounts forward. The beasts trumpeted, shaking water from their ears. Standards lifted. Golden Company griffins, black dragon on red, Dornish sun and spear gleaming where torchlight licked. Jon's own voice joined the roar. Forward! For Aegon! The earth shook with drumming hoofs and pounding feet. Down the grassy slope the army surged, a river of steel and flame converging on King's Landing's yawning gate. Torches on the ramparts flickered as gold cloaks leaned out, waving signals, throwing open sally bars with frantic haste. Jon could see their pale faces, wide-eyed, some still streaked with old blood from bred riots. These men expected a conqueror and welcomed him like rain in drought. As Jon's mount thundered across the drawbridge planks, he glimpsed Dark Sister's silhouette above on the inner wall. Aegon holding the sword aloft in dripping night, cloak torn and black with soot, hair matted to skull, yet alive. The prince raised 2 fingers to his lips and blew a sharp whistle, childhood signal from their days sparring on Lyssa's beaches. Jon felt his throat knot with relief. The courtyard beyond swarmed with Sel's-Word's disarming gold cloaks. Yet no blades clashed, surrender universal, as though some invisible hand had plucked courage from defenders' hearts. Perhaps whispers of wildfire caches primed to ignite if they resisted, or perhaps silver coins clinked soft reassurance in private pouches. Jon cared not. They were inside. He dismounted, boots splashing through puddles and dropped torches sizzling in runoff rivulets. Aegon met him halfway, clasped forearms slick with rain and sweat. The Red Keep? Jon asked. Open. Aegon's grin flashed white. Varys's little birds sang true. We walked the underways, rose within Maegor's holdfast itself. Pycelle tried to bar us, he lies trust like a goose. Cersei fled to the Queen's September with Gregor Clegane at her side. But the gold cloaks sealed the doors at my command. Jon blinked rain from lashes. The mountain remains? Unseen. But Ser Robert Strong's helm languishes in the throne room, empty save for blood at the neck seam. A shudder rippled the prince's shoulders, though he masked it quickly. We barred that hall. Now we consolidate. Outside, Thunder boomed. Rain returned in sheets as if heaven sought to cleanse sin from stone. Jon gestured toward the open gate. Our host crowds within. We must keep order. We will, Aegon said, voice suddenly weary. But first, a shriek cut the night, high, keening, echoing between walls like the cry of a banshee. Then another, followed by the deep-throated roar of an enraged beast. Elephants stamped and trumpeted in fear, their handlers shouting. Jon turned to see black smoke spewing from a warehouse near the river quays where barrels of lamp oil were stacked. Flames licked upward, painting rain red. Wildfire, Tarly barked behind them. No, Jon murmured, heart pounding. Sabotage. Aegon's jaw tightened. Cersei's last gambit. She would burn the city that will not love her. Jon eyed the river, where sparks leaped across oily water. If the flame reaches the chain, we flood her fire. Aegon shouted for messengers. Bring the water wagons, Balak's archers to the rooftops. Shoot any man with torch in hand. Chaos churned. Men raced with buckets. Others hacked gaps in roofs to break fire's crawl. Rain aided them, though lightning threatened. Jon mounted again, rallying a wing of riders to patrol alleys for saboteurs. The city, awakened to conquest, now faced self-immolation. Hours passed in blurred frenzy. Fires flared and sputtered. Saboteurs cornered and cut down. Gold cloaks dividing into factions. Most yielded to Prince Aegon. A few fought and fell or fled. By dawn, the sky glowed sullen but mercifully free of new smoke. Exhausted men slumped in doorways. Women emerged to sweep broken glass. Children crept from hiding to gape at elephants washing soot from their hides in the river. In Maegor's holdfast great hall, beneath the towering iron throne, Jon stood with Aegon, Tarly, Strickland, Arianne, and a dozen captains. Dawn light filtered through slim arrow slits, painting the grotesque blades of the throne in shifting gold. Blood spattered the steps, the work of some last stand by Lannister loyalists in the night. Now the chamber lay silent save for distant drip of water falling from gutters. Aegon approached the throne's foot. He did not mount its steps. Instead he knelt, palms flat upon the cold stone floor polished by centuries of fear. To sit too soon, he murmured, invites hubris. His gaze lifted to Jon. The realm bleeds. We will set our banners on the battlements, but the crown must be won in hearts as well as halls. Tarly's heavy boots echoed. Hearts follow bread. We must restore grain from the warehouses. Tyrell still controls shipments at Maidenpool. And clear the streets of corpses lest plague finish what wildfire begins. Strickland nodded. Our paymasters will open treasury vaults. With or without iron bankers. Jon rested hand upon hilt. And Cersei, sealed within the Queen's September, Aegon said. The faith dare not shield a lioness while denying the dragon. We will grant her trial, by faith or by sword. Arianne stepped forward, eyes on the glittering blades. And the people will watch. Thrones are birthed in witness. Aegon rose. Then witness. He placed one boot on the first step, hesitated, then turned. Jon. Yes, your grace. Take command of the city's patrols. Post Dornish archers along the river, huntsmen on the walls, golden company at the gates until loyalty sworn. I will address the small folk at midday in the square of the Red Keep. They deserve truth. Jon inclined his head. It will be done. Aegon's eyes, ringed with fatigue, softened. Brother. Jon felt something settle within his chest. An old ache eased, a duty fulfilled yet still demanding. He bowed, not as lord to prince, but as griffin to dragon, oathmate beside king. Brother. Midday sun burned through low cloud, casting King's Landing in harsh clarity. From the platform erected atop the Red Keep's outer stair, Aegon addressed a sea of faces. Thousands thronged below, atop market stalls, perched on walls, packed into every window and rooftop. Jon stood to the king's left, Septa Lemore to his right, hood thrown back so the common folk might see one whose arms bore scars of chain, proof of devotion. Randall Tarley and Arian Martell flanked the rear. A hush like held breath swallowed the square. Aegon stepped forward. His voice carried, clear and unstrained over the crowd. Men and women of Westeros, your city has endured fire and famine, war and queen's wrath. I come not as conqueror, but as son of the blood spilled upon these stones when false oaths shattered a realm. I am Aegon of House Targaryen, trueborn son of Prince Rhaegar and Princess Elia, born amidst salt and smoke across the sea, raised under exile's stern tutors to heal what sword and pride have sundered. He let the words linger. Below, some wept, others stared, skeptical yet rapt. I swear by the Seven and the old gods that I will guard the weak, punish the cruel, and never raise taxes for my own vanity. Bread shall feed your children before gold fills my coffers. Knights who betray the helpless shall find no refuge in my guard. And should I break these vows, may the flames that forged my ancestors devour me. A murmur rippled, startled, awed. Jon felt it like wind across wheat. Aegon drew Dark Sister and raised it skyward. Sunlight blazed along the blade's rippling Valyrian pattern. Dorne stands with us, he cried, nodding to Arian. The Reach tenders peace. The North, long wronged, will find redress. Let this day mark the end of the wars of 5 kings and the dawn of one realm indivisible. As if on cue, bells pealed, this time joyful, unbroken. The crowd erupted, a roar that dwarfed the tolling. Flowers, petals, ribbons, whatever color remained, showered upward. Jon watched old soldiers clasp hands with barefoot boys. Merchants embraced strangers. Septas lifted infants high to glimpse the Dragon King. Yet amid jubilation he saw shadows. Sullen eyes beneath Lannister red cloaks tucked hastily under plain shawls. Whispers passing like sickness in back alleys. Peace won by blood can bleed anew. When cheers ebbed, Aegon lowered the sword. Return to your homes in peace. Share what little you have until grain arrives. Tomorrow we rebuild. Tonight, rest under the dragon's wing. He stepped back. Arian took his arm as he turned, trembling slightly once out of sight of the crowd. In the quiet behind the platform, Jon approached. You spoke well. Aegon managed a weary smile. Words are wind. Stonework begins now. He exhaled. Come, brother. Let us deliver justice before dusk. They descended into the keep where Gregor Clegane's corpse lay supine. Armor peeled to reveal what little man remained inside. Pycelle wept in chains. Qyburn knelt pleading for clemency that never came. The High Sparrow, summoned at sword point, eyed the new king with wary curiosity yet swallowed demands in favor of negotiation. All the while ravens burst skyward from the rookery. Messages to every corner of the realm announcing a dragon's second dawn. Night settled gentle. Fires burnt only where cooks roasted victory stews. No flames pierced sky in rage. Jon Connington climbed the tower of the Hand's spiraling stairs, legs leaden yet mind too racing for rest. He emerged onto the rampart walkway overlooking Blackwater Bay. Moonlight silvered the water where the broken chain floated half-submerged. In the distance, red wine sails sat idle, uncertain of allegiance without orders. Footsteps behind. Randall Tarley joined, leaning forearms on parapet. They stood in silence while seabirds' wheels circled the dark. Tarley spoke first. He will need governors for Storm's End, Dragonstone, Harrenhal. A statement, not request. Loyalty must be sealed with grants. Jon nodded. He will see it done. And he will need a hand committed to hard truths. Jon met the man's gaze. You, I swore. Tarley inclined his head slightly. But I am no courtier. Command the bite, not the bark. A realm just conquered requires both. Perhaps 2 hands? Jon suggested. A right and a left. He smiled, weary. 1 iron, 1 silk. Tarley's chuckle was more rumble than mirth. A council of brothers, then. Jon turned back to the bay. Stars trembled in the water, reflections dancing with every ripple. He thought of Griffin's roost, of rubies scattering in a river, of years lost in exile's dusty roads. All paths had led here, to the still moment where wind smelled of salt and promise. In the city behind them, bells rang once more, 3 and 3, then a single clarion note that soared over rooftops clear and sure. The coronation bell, Jon realized, though no crown yet graced the prince's brow. Still, the sound stirred his heart fiercely. The dragon had returned. Now the realm must learn to fly again. He closed his eyes, letting the salt wind wash over scars old and new, and for the first time in decades Jon Connington allowed himself to believe the morrow might dawn brighter than the past.